the notice of non-discrimination first. You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process, regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, veteran status, or background. The accessibility statement: this meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.1, Level AA standards, and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, or if you have any technical difficulties, please contact Erin McGuire, MPO staff at emcguire@ctps.org, or at 857-702-3681, or via the chat box. The guidelines: all participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. After roll call, board members may mute and unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. To participate in the discussion, please select the raise hand function. You can find this by either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or the reactions button in the toolbar. The chair will then call on participants. If you're on the phone, you can use *9 to raise your hand. And with that, introductions. Erin, do you want to call the roll on that?
Yes. Intercore Committee.
Tom Bent here.
Thank you.
I almost forgot.
MBTA Advisory Board.
Good afternoon, Brian Kane, present.
Thank you. Metro West Regional Collaborative.
Dennis Jabin, Metro West.
Thank you. MassDOT Seat 1.
Yep, Derek Cravat here from MassDOT Planning.
MAPC.
Good afternoon, Eric Barrasso with MAPC.
RTAC.
Leonard Diggins here, Advisory Council.
Thank you. MassDOT Highway.
John Romano, MassDOT Highway here.
Thank you. City of Boston.
This is Jen Rowe with the City of Boston.
And the Town of Brookline. Not seeing Mike Sandman, and that calls the roll.
All right, thank you, Erin. All right, we'll move on to today's agenda. The first item is the Advisory Council role and a progress update. And who's jumping in on that?
That would be me, but want to just see if there's any public comments first.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm looking at my one sheet and not the screen. Are there any public comments that anyone would like to bring up right now? And if there's not, and you can always raise your hand, and if we can accommodate you, we will during the meeting. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I would go ahead, Stella.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone. Oh, I guess we can go back to minutes. I can just give my update now if that works. So yeah, I just wanted to take a few moments to give everyone a brief update on the Advisory Council module of the MOU update process, which is currently underway. So we had a meeting on March 13th, and at that March meeting, staff shared information about this committee's work, the MOU update process, the overall timeline, and then the recommendations that had been made by the ad hoc MOU committee for updating the Advisory Council language specifically within the MOU. So as a refresher, those recommendations from the ad hoc committee's memo included clarifying the role and mission of the Advisory Council, outlining the relationship between the Advisory Council and the MPO board, staff, and engagement activities, and then clearly defining goals for the Advisory Council while keeping sort of language about specific mechanisms and logistics for how the Advisory Council works a little bit more vague. So the The advisory council reviewed research as well on peer agencies advisory councils and discussed key takeaways and common challenges related to several areas such as structure, membership, mission, and impact. And then we had a discussion about the advisory council's own mission and role in relation to the MPO planning process. That discussion was great. The advisory council members highlighted some key themes and priorities for inclusion in the MOU update. So just to run through a brief overview, those included the need for more robust membership and member engagement, advisory council member education, the importance and impact of the advisory council's seat on the board. And then we also discussed the relationship, between the advisory council and staff, including how staff seek and utilize input and advice from the advisory council, and how we can continue really proactively facilitating opportunities for the advisory council to participate in the development of MPO programs and projects. So we have been incorporating the feedback from that discussion into a draft update of the advisory council section in the MOU. And that will actually be presented and discussed next week at the April 10th advisory council meeting. And after that, pending further changes to incorporate feedback from the advisory council, we'll bring that draft language to this committee for further discussion. And there's a little timeline here on the screen about sort of indicating the key points where the advisory council will be discussing the MOU language, but of course, as all things in this process, that's subject to change. But we're hoping to have a discussion with this committee about that draft language, likely at some point in May. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Stella. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they would like to ask at this time? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Stella. We're going to go on to item number 5, which would be the RTA representation memo.
Thank you, Tom. Just before I get into this, I'd love to reverse this back, if that's okay, to item number 3 to keep us compliant. Is that all right, Tom?
Sure.
Right. This will just be to
yeah, so basically I need a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the January 16th meeting minutes.
Great, and Jen Rowe,
I will second that motion.
all in favor? Oh, no, roll call vote, sorry.
Yep. Tom Bent,
Yes,
Brian Kane,
Yes,
Dennis Giambetti,
Dennis Shabeta, yes.
Derek Cravat,
Derek Cravat, yes.
Eric Barassa,
Eric Barassa, yes.
John Romano,
John Romano, yes.
Len Diggins,
Diggins, yes.
Jen Rowe.
Jen Rowe, yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
all right, David.
Thank you. As we advance the slides, I'm going to present this. So this is in preparation for April the 18th MPO meeting. So I'm going to present this the way in preparation for that. So if you have comments or questions, please ask them toward the end. My name is David Hong. I'm staff to the MPO and manager of MPO activities. Before the board, I would like to share 3 things today. 1, a brief background on how the topic of RTA representation emerged and has evolved. 2, provide an overview of what the MPO Update Committee has worked on in order to bring a recommendation to this board. And 3, provide a recommendation for your discussion and deliberation. Please note that representatives from the Metro West Regional Transit Authority and Cape Ann Transportation Authority are present today to add remarks as well as answer questions that the board may have. Now, to provide context, in 2022, the FHWA and the FTA issued a recommendation to the Boston Region MPO in our federal review to work with the Metro West Regional Transit Authority, MWRTA, and the Cape Ann Transportation Authority, CATA, to ensure that these providers of public transportation are represented on the MPO board in a way that is satisfactory to all parties. The federal entities had issued a similar recommendation in 2014. The recommendation, though, did not prescribe the precise format for representation. In 2019, then, the board opted to establish a transit committee led by the RTAs, and for the RTAs to have a voting seat on the board representing the interests of that transit committee. Ultimately, this conditional structure was not agreed upon by the RTAs as satisfactory. The 2022 federal review noted this outcome, and in November of 2023, the MPO board delegated revisions of the MOU, including the topic of RTA representation, to an MOU update committee. Since then, this MOU update committee has reviewed the federal regulations related to the composition of MPO boards, met with the two RTAs to understand what form of representation would be in fact satisfactory, and discussed as a committee a number of germane items to include their motivation for joining the MPO board, technical expertise, serviced populations, and staff capacity to partake in board and committee activities. This year, in the month of March, the committee reached consensus to bring the following recommendations to the board. If we could go to the following slide, the recommendations by the MOU committee is the following: to add one permanent voting seat on the MPO board, shared by the region's RTAs on a rotational basis, each serving 2-year terms, with the ability for one to serve as the other's alternate. The ask before the board will be then to discuss, ask questions, and ultimately vote upon this recommendation given today. And this is the presentation format that we have prepared for April 18th. I'll pause here. I'll stop here and see if folks have comments, notes before we, as we kind of wind this up for a future MPO board meeting.
Great. Thank you, David. Any comments or questions for David on this? Yep, I'm seeing none, David.
Okay, that sounds good.
Great job.
Thank you.
We go on to item number 6, which would be the CTPS MAPC fiduciary agreement progress update.
Thanks, Tom. I'll see if I can say something more incendiary to see if I can get some more questions from you all. Let's see what I can do.
The committee's just done such a great job, you know, you know.
Well, I think this is also, it's relatively straightforward, but it's the first time we've talked about this, so there might be some questions, which I'm very happy to answer. So this is about the language in the MOU that references the existence of both CTPS as staff to the MPO and the fact that there is a fiduciary agent to support that staff. So if you go to the next slide. So there's sort of three different parts going on right now around the fiduciary agent kind of updates as a whole. And the first one is the one that we're talking about today that most directly relates to the MOU, because it is about the MOU language itself. As I mentioned, the MOU describes CTPS as the staff to the MPO. It describes the existence of the fiduciary agent for that staff. And it also describes the differentiation between the fiduciary role and the activities and the policy work of the MPO board and support of its staff. There are 2 other kind of parallel components or updates going on at the same time as these MOU updates, which are relevant for you all. And we will also want to have come to the board at the same time as an update to the MOU. So the second kind of packet of updates are in the formal fiduciary agent agreement itself. which is the sort of document with all of the whereas statements, kind of like what you see in the MOU. It's the formal agreement between the board and the staff with the fiduciary agent agreement, with the fiduciary agent. So that's a second set of updates that, again, I think is a little bit more on the straightforward or area, and we hope to have some updates to you all on that language for your reference that we are currently working on with MEPC, perhaps in May. And then there's the sort of the meat of what the agreement it really supports the agreement, and that's the detailed administrative appendix. So this is not part of the MOU. This is part of the fiduciary agent agreement. But again, the MOU references the fiduciary agent agreement. So we're sort of packaging these three things together as I'm talking about them. That administrative appendix has the meat of how the financial, the procurement, the human resource, and the legal activities are carried out between the fiduciary agent and the staff to the MPO. So that will be continuing to work on throughout the summer of this year. And again, we'll hope to have both the updated language in the MOU coming to the board in the fall, as well as an updated full fiduciary agent agreement negotiated with MEPC, plus the detailed administrative appendix coming to the board as well at the same time. So that's sort of the process as a whole. But again, today and what was posted is really focus area number 1. So I'll talk about that first. So next slide. So the guidance from our federal partners about the MOU was was relatively simply worded, I suppose, and that was to update the language in a way that provides clear distinction between MEPC as the fiduciary agent and Central Transportation Planning staff as the staff to the MPO. So the language, the statement is relatively simple, but I just kind of want to acknowledge it is challenging to have an MPO board member that is MEPC, that's a regional agency, that is the fiduciary agent also to the staff of the MPO, which is also sort of a separate entity, CTPS. So we've really had a lot of kind of confusion over time in terms of the overlapping sort of goals and work. And I've been really intent on working with MEPC to sort of build up the understanding of what the two regional agencies do, what CTPS does as staff to the MPO, and how CTPS and MEPC work together to make sure that the regional planning work that we're doing really is effective, and that it is clear that MEPC has the role that it has on the MPO board and as the vice chair of the board. So while it's stated very clearly, I know this has been a really hard sort of clarity for people to sort of navigate. But in the MOU language, we've tackled it, I think, the best that we can right now. So next slide. So we posted language that we've adjusted and changed for the MOU. I think we posted a clean version. I'm not sure if we were able to post an updated redline version. I think we had not done that, but we do have that and can share that with this committee for your reference. But I can also kind of summarize what we've done in the language, because if you look at the redline version, it looks like a lot of text changes, but it really kind of boils down to a couple of these bullet points in essence. So what we did in terms of updating the language is we changed a bit about how CTPS is referred to right up front. The prior language, I actually kind of looked back, and it's persisted through many different versions of the MOU, and it was sort of linked more to when the staff was originally created and was sort of supported through funds and staff from other agencies. And now we're in a very different place. Staff of the MPO are hired through an independent hiring process and become legal employees of MEPC, but really work for CTPS, which is in service to the MPO. So we looked through and kind of removed some of the noise, the language that was left over, and put forward a new simple description, which is CTPS as the staff to the MPO with the responsibility of carrying out the 3C process under the policy control of the Boston Region MPO. So straightened that out a bit and got rid of old references. And then the next bullet, we broadened the description of the fiduciary role. So prior, the MOU had only really referenced the financial services of the fiduciary, but the fiduciary, thank you, Dave Hong, but the fiduciary does have and does provide services in the areas of finance, human resources, procurement, and legal counsel. And so we wanted to explicitly state the range of those roles to make sure we're acknowledging that, and explicitly state that there's a fee paid to the fiduciary agent for those services. That's kind of the second body of updates. The third is that that as the staff to the MPO with a fiduciary, we are administered according to the employment policies established collaboratively between CTPS leadership and our fiduciary. So the employment policies are between the staff and the fiduciary, but the work of the staff of the MPO is carried out consistent with the Boston Region MPO vision, goals, policy, and direction. Now, I will just say that this is consistent with what happens today. So we're not changing anything about how we sort of operate. But again, the language there is kind of like remnants of a prior time when things worked a little bit differently. So what we wanted to do in this language is capture how we operate today, which is, I would argue, how we want to operate. So this is capturing where we want to be and where we are. And then the last bullet, finally, is that we tightened up the language as well. And this was also related to some of the elements of the federal certification review comments, just to be clearer than the prior language was, that the role of a board member and fiduciary shouldn't be conflated, that when a fiduciary is acting as its capacity as a board member, it needs to act at that point in the best interest of the MPO and its members. And when it's acting as a fiduciary, it's acting as a fiduciary. So just kind of being clear that MAPC is a fiduciary more generically, but we know in our case it's MAPC, that MAPC as a board member, when acting as a board member, is acting in the interest of the MPO. And so again, that's always really been the case, and that's been the intent of the language, but we sort of tightened up that language to make sure that that was, I think, a little simpler and easier to interpret. So that is the summary of the edits we've made. I think Dave added a comment that we would be posting some of the red line versions, but if you had a chance to take a look at the language we posted, I would definitely welcome any comments, questions, concerns about where the language is at and what I've proposed here as the changes. Then happy to share with you the red line version if you'd like to compare, contrast what was there before versus what's there now.
John Romano.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Tegan. I just wanted to say I did read through what was posted, and adding that to the explanation that Tegan just gave us. I think the staff did a fantastic job with this, and I think they hit the points right on the head, brought us up to, as Tegan said, kind of writing what we're actually doing. And I think it's as good as it stands. So thank you. Nice job.
Tegan, I just had a question. It was more, what was the last time the agreement had been actually updated? It's been a long time, hasn't it?
It has, and sorry, my fire alarm started going off, so I got a little distracted, but I think it just stopped. I think it was temporary. If it goes off again, forgive me. I'm going to go off camera for a minute to turn it off.
Well, I'll get out of the house.
Okay, I think it's just no. I think it's a false alarm. So the fiduciary agent agreement, I've been tracking down some of this history lately, and it has been quite fun. The draft of the fiduciary agent agreement that we currently have today was shared with what was then EOTC back in 2001. So that is the date of the agreement that we have. It was never fully executed as in signed with formal signatures at that point, but it was a fully negotiated sort of final version that the entities came up with at that time. So it is quite old. And that's part of why it is such a process to come up with a current modern fiduciary agent agreement. I would say there's some of the formal language that's more about updating, but we are all very different agencies now than we were, 23 years ago. So it's taking some time to sort of capture how we operate now and how we want to operate together.
And I would think at some point, when we get to the end of this, would we need legal counsel to look at that, and would MAPC also, to finally, bless it and say, yep, this is it?
Yeah, so what I can say in response to that is we are currently working with what is MAPC and CTPS's legal counsel. So we are working with the legal counsel that is our fiduciary agent's legal counsel. So theoretically operating in the best interest of the agencies. And if the board wanted to discuss getting and talk about approving external legal counsel to do a review of that, that's something that you all could certainly discuss and decide upon.
Okay, great. Thank you. Jen Rowe.
Yes, thank you. I guess I may be missing something. I was wondering if you could, so I think the two things that I'm not necessarily seeing, and I'm wondering maybe we'll see. But I guess one is the new language that describes the range of business services from the fiduciary agent. I wasn't seeing that in the draft posted. And the same thing with, I guess, the following bullet about the noting the employment practices are being developed with the fiduciary agent.
Oh, so the two bullets on this page, there are, if we actually pull up, if we could pull up, I think the red line version will do it. It's actually very simply stated in the MOU language. It is more thoroughly described in the what will be the fiduciary agent agreement and the appendix. But let me try to scroll down a little bit. Hang on. So see the purple line at the top. It says the fiduciary agent also provides a business services for a fee to CTPF in the areas of finance, human resources, procurement, and legal counsel. So that level of description beyond financial resources was never described before. So that's an addition. And then the other bullet was around the employment policies. And that is just in the same paragraph, actually. So yeah, the sentence after that is CTPS as staff to the MPO shall be defined legally as employees of the fiduciary agent, and as such, they shall be administered according to employment policies established by CTPS leadership in cooperation with the fiduciary agent. So this was really confusing before. Before it was just a general reference to policies, and there was also a very different structure of sort of managing the day-to-day work of CTPS back when this language was originally drafted, and this language no longer made sense. And so what does make sense to call out is that when we talk about, again, the employment policies around things like benefits, hiring, firing, those sorts of things where our fiduciary agent has those legal, human resource, and other responsibility for us, we need to be in alignment and make sure that they can carry out their fiduciary responsibilities. When it comes to carrying out the work of the MPO and following, the policies and intents of the MPO, that's where we as the staff are working in alignment with the policies of the MPO itself. Does that make more sense, or does that address your question?
Yes, yeah, it does. And actually, I think, yeah, what you show in text here makes a ton of sense. I think maybe that's just what it was posted wasn't quite in alignment there. Yeah, but yeah, I just chatted back and forth with Dave about that. So sounds like that will be in process.
Yeah, great.
Len.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but since Tegan
Come
wanted
on,
something,
Len.
since Tegan wanted something incendiary, I'll say that, we won't hold the fiduciary agent, harmless at all. We'll hold them completely responsible for everything. So, can you just make that little change? That's it. Thank you.
I'm not sure they would agree to that. I would just say. Ironically, I used the word incendiary, and then my fire alarm had some weird chirping thing going on. I don't know what just happened. That was strange.
So,
Yeah, but Margie won't. She won't like that.
Yeah, Margie won't like that.
We include all that in our contracts.
It's all good. I mean, I've been quiet this meeting and also the previous meeting because it's just we've done so much prep work. That people are kind of like saying, it's all good at this point. You know me, I'll say something. I really need to say something. Otherwise, I'll just save my vocal cords. But thank you. Take a great job.
It could be the battery in your smoke detector. It's telling you it's time to change it. So
it could be, but it was a little more aggressive than that. But don't worry, we have smart ones. They talk to me, so I could tell. Might have been a test.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Jen.
Yeah, I was wondering if Aaron, I think, is sharing the screen. Yes, could scroll up a little bit because I think I had a question in this area, and it might already be answered by the edits, although it'll take me just a sec to understand if it was, and it looks like it was. Like the part I had a question out was always crossed out, so we're all good.
I think that what might have happened, and Dave Hong, maybe you could confirm, is that we may have accidentally posted the original version of the text and not the edited version of the text.
That is confirming that, and then we will
Okay.
repost the revised version
Okay.
on the
So
website.
my apologies for that confusion. So in essence, this was a preview to what we'll be giving you following the meeting in terms of the edit. So please do
Right.
look at it again and you'll see the difference.
Brian Kane.
Thanks, Tom. This is great, and I fully support it. I just wanted to make sure, as a state agency or acting as a state agency, is DTPS required to go through a procurement process to establish who the fiduciary agent is? And I hope not.
I don't think so.
Okay, are we sure on that? I mean, because it's theoretically a lot of money.
I can't answer that. This is where you assume things, but I mean, I've assumed not, since this has been the agreement since 1974, I believe. So, but I think that's a good question for legal counsel that we'll just ask and confirm.
Yeah, you can call the IG's office too, and they'll tell you.
Okay, I'll make a note
I
of
don't think you
that.
get anyone else to bid, but again,
Yeah, who would want to? Yeah.
if we're jumping through hoops, let's jump through all the hoops.
Make a note.
Marjorie.
Oh, hi, Margie.
I've been here. I just haven't wanted to interrupt and asking if you would please recognize me as a member of the public to speak. Brian, no, because this is an interagency, intergovernmental agreement, we do not need to seek procurement for this purpose.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? All right, seeing none. David, what do we have next?
We have just looking at work planning. And so if we go to those slides, just reflecting where we are in the year. And before that, we're going to look at just the immediate term. So on April the 4th, Tom, if you'd like, we could signal to the board that the committee and our committee will bring a proposed vote on the 18th to the full MPO board regarding RTA representation. And then on the 18th, we've created an agenda item totaling 30 minutes, including Q&A and some time for both RTA entities to provide some remarks. Then on May the 1st, tentatively, a rolling advisory council module progress update. It's TBD, and then we may start engaging, or we may start doing some planning around agency collaboration description, that module, but that is contingent on kind of where the tip is. We'll probably be releasing the tip on the 18th or the 22nd for public comment, and so if all that is clear, kind of this module can start kicking off, and staff will reach out to one by one the relevant agencies and start reflecting on how some of the tip, how some of the processes throughout the year could be potentially enhanced, or communication channels can be enhanced. That is, I think, separate. One is the actual MOU update component. That's more of identifying, clarifying the language of interagency collaboration. And then as a byproduct of that, it gives us a moment to reflect on enhancements that can be made that won't make its way into the MOU, but perhaps as a clause saying this is in the future how things may continue to be updated here at the MOU. And then the rest is kind of TBD We also have, if you look at the bottom right box, I just sent out an email signaling to the tip contacts. So a lot of the municipal contacts around the fact that MOU updates are ongoing and that there'll be a opportunity for public comments closer to the fall when a lot of the written updates are done, so that folks are able to comment or ask questions at that point. But we'll also be communicating a similar message through, I think, communication engagement team's newsletter as well. And so that's where we stand in terms of the work plan. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments for Dave? All right, seeing none, Dave, and I did see the email that you sent out today, so thank you for getting that out. Len just put his hand up.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So I mean, this is going to back up a little bit, regarding the statement that we're going to make to the board regarding MPO. I'm sorry, RTA membership. I didn't have it in me to go through the minutes, but for some reason I had the thought that their membership was going to be effective. In November, like when after the elections, and the statement says that it'll be effective when we sign the new MOU, which will be around the end of the year, probably around the same time, but there is the chance that it will happen after that first meeting in November when we bring on the new members. Am I wrong about that?
Sorry, Len, could you make the distinction? Oh, sorry. Tom, could you recognize me?
No, that's fine. Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you.
I'm
Len,
not that formal, so.
Len, could you just acknowledge the distinction, and then Aaron, would we be able to go back to slide 15 just as a reference point?
Yeah. So the distinction is that I don't remember the exact dates, but we have an election in what, October, and then we have like our annual meeting, I think, meeting in November. So that's when the folks that are elected begin their first. So I thought that we were bringing the new RTA members on board then, or at least the person that's going to be the representative on the board at that meeting, So either that's my recollection, or my recollection is just based on my imagination, that because sometimes I just kind of fill in the gaps with what I think is going to happen. That's not actually what was said. So first off, I'm just making sure that what I'm recalling is what was said. And I'll stop there, David, to make sure that I answered your question. You understand the distinction I'm making, David? Because the agreement says that'll be when we sign the MOU towards the end of the year, which could be after that first meeting for the new board members. You got the distinction?
Yeah, okay. The first meeting being the October meeting, or the one following the vote after October for the November annual meeting.
Yeah. So I figured that we were going to bring that new board member on at that point. It seems like a nice time to bring them on, unless there's some compelling reason not to. And that compelling reason would be that we haven't signed the MOU, but I guess we could just make that decision that we don't have to wait until we sign the MOU, that this is kind of, because it's part of the MOU, but it could have a little separate track. So I just put that out there because, well, we have a lot of time, and I hadn't said much before.
Yes, okay, thanks for catching that.
Yeah.
Len, it is like a slight discrepancy, but it does matter in terms of when we actually get to those specific dates. And so we'll talk about that internally and figure out kind of a way to resolve that, so that we're not saying saying two different things, which are, you're right, slightly different. That makes sense.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Len. Any other questions or comments on this? Seeing none. What's up next, Dave?
Yes, so the next slide I'll walk us through. And so slide 23 This is just marks where we are. So advisory council role module, we're seeing updates there, fiduciary agreements we touched upon today. The RTA roles were well underway, and then we'll likely pull up the agency collaboration description work just to front load it a little bit. And so we're in good standing. If we go to the following slide, please. This is where we have member items. So back to you, Tom, momentarily or for a moment.
Great, thank you, Dave. Are there any member items? Seeing none. Dave, it's been a very efficient meeting today. So I guess next meetings would be the next agenda item.
So the next meetings are going to take place beginning of May, same time, 1:30 to 3. And then subsequently the first week of June, June 5th, Wednesday, 1:30 to 3 as well. Thank you.
All right, great. Just first of all, I want to thank everyone today. Staff, great job putting all this together, and looking forward to bringing the RTA piece to the full board in a couple of weeks. And if nobody else has any questions, I'd like the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And
Second.
Genro for a second.
Yes, I'll second that.
All right. Do you need a roll call or all in favor?
Without objection.
All right. Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Nice
you.
job.
Everyone.